In this video, I'm going to cover a sense that we don't often think of as a sense, and that is your sense of balance, or what we call the vestibular sense. This is tied actually to the same part of your head as your sense of hearing. So we're going to take a look in that same region. That's why we've got the same picture as you saw in the video on hearing. So what is your vestibular sense? This is your ability to detect your acceleration and orientation in respect to gravity. So basically, like you can think of your sense of balance, this is your ability to basically do things like stand up and walk in a specific direction. So I've got a short video that I want to show you that is related to the vestibular sense, because we can mess with our vestibular sense. So let me pull that up. Oh, nope. Maybe? There we go. All right.
Have a quick break and another little chat with Josh and get back to his boys down on the down in the dugout. We'll see you soon.
You spin faster, you'll run faster. It's a fact. Keep spinning, keep spinning, keep spinning, keep spinning. All right, 5 more spins, 5 more spins. You can do it. All right, now run to Ashley. Go, 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 go. You can make it. You can do it. She's over there to the right. Who's going to get there? And it's going to be LJ with the win. LJ, congratulations. You've won the Sam Bat Dizzy Race. Sam Bat, the official bat of the Adelaide Bite.
All right. So as you can see from that video, those individuals had some major issues with their balance. And I'm guessing that most of you, if not all of you, have done something similar in the past, where, you stick your head on the bat, run around in a circle, or you sit in a chair and have somebody spin you around and then you get up and try and walk. All right? That is where you are messing with this vestibular sense. So let's talk about how this sense works. So there are 2 organs involved with your vestibular sense. One are these semicircular organs right here. So they are attached to the cochlea, but they are not involved in hearing. So we've got actually 3 of these semicircular canals. So there's 3 loops, and each of those loops is actually in charge of a direction. So one's in charge of X, one's in charge of Y, and one's in charge of Z. So one is in charge of telling which way is up and down, one is in charge of telling which way is left and right, and one is in charge of telling which way is front and back. So it's kind of cool to think about that we've got this set up inside of our head. We've got our own little gyroscope, if you want to think of it that way. So that's one part of our vestibular sense. The other organ that's involved are down in this region right here, in this fat section of the structure. So it's kind of towards the cochlea, but not quite the cochlea. And this section is full of what we call otolith organs. So otolith organs are kind of neat in a way. So the canals can detect rotation. So like I said, those guys are in charge of, up and down, left and right, forward and back. The otoliths, on the other hand, these guys are going to detect things like your acceleration. So your linear acceleration going forward or backward or side to side, but your actual movement. And they're going to be able to detect you tilting your head back and forth. And these right here are your otolith organs. So they are set up just like we talked about with other senses, they have sense cells that are attached to nerves. We've got the sense cell that have little hairs, so they're kind of like the hair cells in your cochlea that are detecting the vibrations from sound waves. What's happening here instead is that these cells are actually in a fluid, and on top of that fluid are these little otoliths. Otoliths are basically little tiny stones or crystals of material. So you do literally have rocks in your head. If anybody's ever asked you, is your head full of rocks? You can say, why, yes, I have tiny rocks in my head. Because that's what these little otoliths are. And so what happens is when you tip your head, for example, your brain knows you've tipped your head because you can see in this picture, when you tip your head, the otoliths slosh the other way. So think about like a cup of water. You know, when you tip it, the water moves the other direction at first and then sloshes back. Same idea here. So this fluid sloshes back and forth in response to the direction that you move your head, or in the response that you move your body. That's the linear acceleration part, because your head goes with your body. And so when these otoliths and the fluid over them slosh back and forth, they slosh these hairs on the cells back and forth, and that triggers these cells to say, hey, we're moving that way. No, we're moving that way, as far as which way everybody's going. And this YouTube video that's here, that's linked here, I will actually post that along with this in the lesson, so that way you can watch that separately. It's a little longer than the bat video, and you can see how these guys work together in order to create this sense of, you know, your balance. Now, there is a condition related to your sense of balance. Just like with vision, we have things like nearsightedness and astigmatism and blindness. And with sound, our sense of sound, we have things like deafness and the loss of our sense of sound. With your balance, with your vestibular sense, there's a condition called vertigo. And vertigo is when you feel like you're moving when you aren't, or you have an abnormal perception of motion when you're moving. So let me talk about what this means. So for example, right now I'm sitting still, but if I'm suffering from vertigo, it would feel like I'm moving or that the room would be spinning around. The other part, the abnormal perception of motion when you're moving, would be if, for example, you were walking forward, but you felt like you were leaning or turning or, you know, even leaning backwards. Basically, you know from what you can see, you're moving in a specific direction, but it feels like you're moving in a different direction. So that's what vertigo is. Very often, vertigo makes us feel sick or dizzy. So this is attached to a lot of different conditions. Vertigo is not actually a disease. It is actually a symptom related to a lot of different conditions. So you can get vertigo from age. So as you get older, the organs, again, that are related to the vestibular sense start to break down. So those otoliths start to slosh on their own, or the hairs attached to the sense cells aren't working correctly or are breaking down. Ear infections can create this because it builds up fluid that can mess with the organs related with this. Same thing with migraines, that can change the pressure in the organs and make them not function correctly. And then there are actually diseases that do affect the function of the otoliths. So whether they change the structure of the otoliths or the makeup of the material that the otoliths are floating around in. there are lots of different ways that you can actually end up with vertigo. In fact, if you've ever had an ear infection, you may have had a doctor test you for vertigo. It's a really fun test because you already don't feel good, but they basically sit there and then they shake your head and then see if you basically move. So they shake your head and put you back where you were. And if you move or you feel sick or dizzy, that's a good indicator that you are suffering from vertigo, because that means that the otoliths and semicircular canals in your head aren't functioning correctly. Alcohol actually will affect this as well. So alcohol actually changes the density of the materials in the organs for your vestibular sense. And it doesn't reset very quickly. And this is why people who've been drinking alcohol, their sense of balance gets out of whack, because they're basically, the organs aren't working correctly. The density is not correct in the fluids, so it's not registering the movement correctly, and that's why you end up overcompensating or undercompensating your movements and stumbling around and having problems holding things and so forth. All right, so if vertigo is this, when you feel like you're moving when you aren't, or this abnormal perception of motion when you're moving, dizziness, what's motion sickness? So motion sickness is basically your two senses, your eyes and your vestibular sense, getting confused. So we are not used to doing things like moving in vehicles. That's not how we evolved. And so when you're moving in a vehicle, your vestibular sense, you're doing pretty much a constant acceleration, right? So you're moving in a straight line. So everything in your semicircular canals and your otoliths are pretty much settled. So to your brain, for this set of your sense organs, you're sitting still. You're not moving. So according to your brain, with your vestibular organs, so with your semicircular canals and your otoliths, when you're traveling in a car, a bus, a plane, a boat, whatever it is, your vestibular organs are saying, we're not moving, because you're moving at a constant rate. And so none of these are registering any sort of movement. However, your eyes are seeing something different. Your eyes are registering movement. And so the motion sickness is the confusion of your brain seeing movement, right? So you're seeing the scenery move by or whatever it is, but your brain is like, but wait, we're not moving, because our vestibular organs say that we're not moving. And so the combination of the two is what can trigger motion sickness. And what can make it worse is if you've got those both going on and then you start moving your eyes, doing reading, on in a book or on a phone, because now you've got double movement. You've got the movement of the scenery and then you're moving your eyes, and that basically overloads your brain in a way. And so your brain is going, no, we're not moving, but your eyes are going, but we are moving. And then you're adding the additional movement of your eyes actually moving by doing reading of some sort. So vertigo and motion sickness are two different things. Vertigo is because these vestibular organs are functioning incorrectly due to some sort of disease or condition, and that's creating the symptom of vertigo. Motion sickness is the mixed signals of your vision system and your vestibular system not getting the same sort of signals from what's going on. All right, that wraps up vestibular sense, or your sense of balance.